1 toot for war, 2 toots for dinner, 3 toots means Excalibur's been stolen. Because everybody instantly knows
Excalibur's been stolen!
How often is Excalibur getting stolen?
Dragonclaw, wing and scale. Come now, let's examine a tale of the greatest beast ever considered. Another episode of Big Flying Lizards.
Okay, first things first. Talking about Quest for Camelot, I'm gonna need a bias check. Just how much is nostalgia going to play into the discussion of this film?
145%.
140. The nostalgia bias is set to a meter of 14 out of 10. Everybody watching has been warned. This is a film that Bryce and I watched a lot as children.
Yes.
A lot.
Quite a bit.
And I mean, I was just going to announce like a minor bias because I am an adult now. But maybe you were on this movie even more than I was, or how much I realized.
This movie was around most of our lives.
Right. 1998.
Yeah.
Roughly a year after I came into this world.
Yeah. I mean, it's been there. I'm sure that I watched it at a very young age. And I mean, there's a lot of humor that I was still enjoying as an adult in it. Some of it, like, how do they know what frequent flyer miles are? But no, there's definitely going to be nostalgia. There's a lot of nostalgia.
I think that we just needed to say that up top. And like, we are adults and we are going to have a relatively adult conversation about this film, as much as we are capable of that. you know. But yeah, like it's just up front that like we saw this movie as kids. I know the songs like the back of my hand, at least the melodies, and like I can't get away from that, you know?
Well, you know what I have to say about that, Austin?
Huh?
Welcome to Big Flying Lizards, a dragon movie and television podcast. I am one of your hosts, Bryce Wilson. Joined across from me here is Austin Snyder. Austin, why don't you say hello?
Hello.
Austin, what are we doing today?
Today we are talking about Quest for Camelot.
And
Dragons. Today we're talking dragons. We've never officially agreed on that. Is our like intro band? It just kind of happened most of the time. Today we're talking dragons, specifically Quest for Camelot. Would you like me to intro the film?
I would love for you to intro the film.
All right. Quest for Camelot is a 1998 family fantasy film and musical based on the novel The King's Damsel by Vera Chapman. That's loosely based. It was directed by Frederick Duchow for Warner Bros. And intended as the studio's first animated feature, but a troubled production led to a delayed release. As it is, the movie follows a young girl, Kayley, as she attempts to recover Excalibur, which has been stolen by the wicked former Knight of the Round Table, Ruber. Bryce, revisiting as an adult, how did you feel about Quest for Camelot?
I have to say, I always thought Ruber was a good villain for like he's so much better than
He's like the best part of this movie.
He really is. And it's Gary Oldman.
Which I had no idea.
No idea. But he has like the eye twitching, like showing that he's mad and insane.
Well, this isn't mocap, but like the voice conveys that just as much.
Yeah. And so most of the people that were singing, they actually brought in singers to sing. Gary Oldman sang those songs.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Which,
so, like most of the leads, I mean, you're talking like Kayley and Garrett.
Yeah. And even King Arthur.
Yeah, all of them, they had like dubbed singing voice, which was standard at the time. Gary Oldman did his own stunts, so to speak, as did, of course,
Eric and Dodd.
Yeah. Yeah. The dragons.
dragons.
The dragons.
Dragon.
Is it a singular entity? Is it a double?
We'll get into it.
Yeah, that's weedy, but that's what we're here to talk about today.
Yeah.
Fun movie.
It is I'll admit, it's not as good as I remembered it. But yeah, it's a kid's movie. It's not going to be as good.
Absolutely.
But it's still a lot of fun. And oddly enough, I think this movie was very progressive for like the late 90s.
Oh, okay. Outline that for me.
Like, how many movies do you watch where the lead has like a disability like Garrett does, being blind? And instead of like being like, oh, he has superpowers, it's showing, okay, it's like Toph. Like a lot of people are saying Avatar was getting progressive before it was cool, where Toph was one of the main leads, and they made it so it was like a disability, but it also played as a strength. And that's sort of how Garrett is. He's blind, and instead of being like, oh, I'm just this super badass who can just echolocation,
Which he is.
He is. But he hasn't. Somehow he can talk to a falcon, which, I'm willing to overlook.
Yeah, Aiden taught him how to survive in the forest, and I'm very interested in how those early conversations went.
It's Merlin's bird.
Then again, I think there is a credited actor as the voice of Aiden.
There is.
But he has no lines.
Here's my thought. What if it's an actual bird?
There's no way that's the case. There is no way. You think they credit the dog in Wizard of Oz?
They do.
But this is an animated film.
They credit the monkeys in Indiana Jones and Sandlot.
All right, I'm going to do some research after the fact, and I will add a correction if that is in fact the case. But I am willing to lay down some money right now that it's not.
It probably is not, but I want to believe, Austin. I want to believe.
Alrighty. So a lot of positives on this movie, just in broad strokes.
Well, also, sorry, to be progressive as well. Kayley wants to be a knight, and she ends up being a knight.
Yeah. See, I'll give you that and undercut it just a little bit in that, yes, Kayley wants to be a knight, and that is her primary goal. She also ends this movie in a white dress. Yes,
but
the cart says just knight.
It's just knight, exactly. But we were giving Damsel last week a hard time about how
Billy Bobby
Brown McJagger Bon Jovi just became a badass. And I feel like we get a lot more personality learning about Kayley. Like, she was always sort of free-spirited, adventurous. But she beats Ruber using her mind and being strategic. She's not over here pulling out a greatsword of I am going to duel you, great knight of the realm. And she's taking lessons that she learned throughout the movie on how to survive and uses that to beat him.
I hear you. It seems like you're maybe a little warmer on this movie than I am, but I do like it. Enjoyed my rewatch a great deal this morning, and I'm excited to talk about it.
I enjoyed my rewatch taking place 6 hours ago.
Lovely. In that glorious 360p,
right? On a screen about yay big.
There is not a Blu-ray out of this movie. Now, you can pay to stream it in HD, but we are poor. Trying to buy a house over here. So it is what it is.
It is what it is.
And also rely on memory. We were raised on VHS, It's the movie itself that matters.
I'm not going to lie, Austin. I have a few of the movies that we own. I mean, it's on our movie list on VHS, and I almost, for nostalgia's sake, want us to watch it.
When's the last time you watched a VHS tape?
Honestly, I've probably seen a VHS tape within the past 10 years.
Okay, 10 years, yes, because I know that there were some obscure titles that I tracked down in college that I could only get the VHS of, but since then, nothing's coming to me. I definitely don't have a player.
Oh, I do.
Okay.
My family has a hard time throwing stuff away.
Well, I know who I'm going to call when I get like really, really deep on Jean-Luc Godard or something. Well, no, like all of his stuff's probably at least on DVD. But I don't know. We'll find something, some obscure title at some point where it'll be necessary.
We'll find it. But something else that we'll find is the tragic story of Sir Lionel in the movie. Do we just want to dive right on in, or do we want to give some more?
Okay, so the only other piece of table setting that I want to do for this movie, so there's just a little bit of context around the production before we get into the
yes
that I want to outline.
And there's some stuff tied to the production that I'd love to get into about specifically around the character of Rupert.
Okay, so this film was commissioned by Warner Bros. It was set to be their very first animated feature. And all of this, it was set to be released around like 95.
Yes.
This movie came out in 98, so there were some delays in the middle there. Let me outline it.
Let's hear it.
So, as originally conceived, this movie was supposed to be a little bit more adult and also a little closer to its source material. And I'm just going to say right now, I think as an adult, I think I would have liked that movie a little bit more.
Yes.
And I'm not going to turn this whole podcast into a what if session. Like, that's not the movie that we have, but just understanding with a little bit of research what they were going for before, that sounds a little bit more exciting. And a lot of the stuff that I still like in this movie seem to be remnants of that. Like, Rupert is unhinged. Like, this is not the kind of villain that you find in most children's films of today.
He was giving me a lot of Rasputin vibes in Anastasia.
Sure. Yeah, but like genuinely wicked. Like, yes. If I was in the same room as this person, I would leave. Well, and it doesn't matter how big that room is.
Like he said multiple times, I miss it when there was just violence everywhere.
and he's unapologetic. Yes. Which I love in a villain, where like at the beginning, all of the knights are like holding up their shields and like singing. Like, honor,
strength,
connection, and then he's just like, me. And he's like, all I care about is me. I am selfish, and that is the way to be.
And I'm not. Again, we'll talk more, and I want to get more into production. But in this instant, particular, when he did that, he's like, "Can we please stop with this singing and get on with it?" And I'm just like, I'm sort of on that boat. Like, I like the song, but let's get on with it.
Yeah, Ruber's got some interesting ideas.
He's got big ideas.
Okay, but on the production,
yes.
Like, I think the original text and like first script was actually more focused on the Holy Grail.
Yes.
And there was like an element where Kayley was trying to like save the life of her sister more so than retrieve Excalibur.
Well, Kayley wasn't even her name originally.
No, it was Susan. What? Yeah. Or no, Susanna.
Yes.
Was the name of the character. I mean, there are a lot of similarities, and this isn't a podcast about like outlining all of the differences there, but sufficient to say, it seemed like it was going to be a little bit more of an adult affair.
Yes.
In subject matter, also probably in the humor, which I think is part of the reason they were able to attract some of the talent that they got. And essentially what it came down to is the production ran into some issues because it was the studio's first animated endeavor.
Yeah. And
because they were pushing for more of a family film. So it's like the Disney Renaissance came into full swing. Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Lion King, and they're like, no, we need like a family feature that's going to be a musical, that's going to be rated G. That's what's in vogue right now. And so a lot of adjustments were made. Originally, the film was going to be co-directed by the director that it did direct it, Frederick Duchow, but also animation legend Bill Croyer was going to co-direct. He's the guy who directed Ferngully.
Remind me which that one.
That's the one. Robin Williams plays the bat, and it's about like a fairy that's trying to save the forest. The villain is a big sludge monster named Hexus.
I think I may have not.
You missed Ferngully?
I may have missed this movie.
Dang, that's actually really surprising to me. But it's good. At least my memory of it is good. I haven't seen it in over a decade. He also, this Bill Croyer guy, he has animation credits on a lot of stuff.
Yes.
A lot of stuff. But with the pressure from the studio, he left. And then Duchow saw the movie through. But I'm just outlining all of this up top to show that this is not a perfect movie, and it has some scars from that. But for I think the seed of this movie was really, really strong and ended up yielding some impressive results, even all the way through production.
I definitely would have loved to see what they originally wanted to do, but especially like this movie was very important to me, and probably there's several movies that I can point to that really have really built up this trajectory of where I'm at in life for having a love for fantasy. You could make a strong argument that Quest for Camelot is one of those movies that really was the original.
It's a basis, huh?
Yeah, I mean, it is one of those movies where my parents are like, oh yeah, let's throw it on. And it's got griffins. It's got Excalibur. It's got dragons. It's got several dragons. More than one dragon. And it's got, which we have a knight that actually was a voice actor in this movie.
Oh? Like a knight in real life, like knighted by the queen?
Yeah, Sir John Gullild.
Okay, he's on the sheet.
Yeah, he played Merlin. And this was his last film that he ever did.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah. The more
it's
you know.
legit.
It's legit. But I mentioned before, Reuben?
I thought his name was Reuben.
I did.
But going into the movie, that's what is in my memory. But his name's Ruber, which is not a real name, but whatever.
So he's loosely based off of the Red Knight, which is the villain in the story that's before. And if I understand it correctly, the Red Knight is actually a very common villain that pops up in the Legends of King Arthur. So
it makes me want, because there's also the Green Knight. Is there just a whole rainbow? Is it like the Ninja Turtles? How many colored knights do we have?
I don't know. I'm sure there'd be some. Comment below. How many?
Sorry, I don't think that was the right phrase. How many knights that are a color are there?
Yeah, comment below.
My apologies.
But I know in one of the legends, Sir Percival is the one who kills
the Red Knight.
The Red Knight. And then there's another legend where there's a knight, somebody who's trying to become a knight takes the armor, and he becomes then the Red Knight. And
one of these days, I'm gonna find the time to do like a deep dive on Arthurian legend and just have an absolute ball.
That will be a weekend.
A weekend? More like a year.
Austin, we're literally.
It's gonna coincide with my sabbatical to Europe.
We're going to do a podcast in a castle in Europe, and we're going to just discuss Arthur legends all day. But anyways, yes, a lot of nostalgia is going to be going into this, but there's also a lot of good that's actually in this film.
Fully agree.
This might have been the film that I've enjoyed the most so far watching.
No, we are only... This is the 6th movie we've covered?
I think so.
So not like an insane take out there, but it's a fun one.
Yeah. Like some of the jokes are dated.
Yeah.
Some of the lines you could not be saying in a movie in 2024, but it's fun. It's enjoyable. It's corny, but it's a kid's movie. It's supposed to be corny in a lot of ways.
Okay, well, why don't we get into some of the specifics now? Let's get this show on the road.
So the movie starts off already great music.
Yeah, caught me off guard, man.
Yeah.
And do you know who did the score? Because it's a two-hander. Like the score, I think, is strong, and then I think that the music, like the musical numbers,
Yes.
are also pretty strong. I mean, we're not talking like Disney Renaissance level, but I'm giving it like a B+.
Yeah.
Overall. Again, maybe that's nostalgia speaking, but watching them this morning, had a great time.
Yeah. So who did the score?
Patrick Doyle. Do you know what else Patrick Doyle did?
What else did he do?
The score for Aragon.
No! He can't keep getting away with this.
No, he's a reliable guy. He's been around for a lot of fantasy stuff. He did the fourth Harry Potter movie. He did the first Thor movie. He's good.
Okay. Yeah. But song is great opening up, and it starts us off by the sea, and we sort of see the family. We see Kayley as a little girl. We see Kayley's mom, and we see Sir Lionel,
Mm-hmm. Her father. For some reason, I kept hearing Sir Lionel, and I'm like, what? No, wrong race.
Yeah. Yep.
They're having a jolly good time, but
Good dad.
Yes, and to my memory, also Kayley's also sort of expressing some interest in being a knight, even from this young age.
Well, I think she does say it like that she wants to be a knight, and she wants to hear stories of like how the kingdom came to be and all of that. And we get the whole legend of like there was chaos, there was wars, there was darkness, and there was this the sword in the stone, and only the king could be the person who pulls it. And right when people were about to lose hope, Arthur pulled the sword, and now Camelot is amazing.
And it's the best, and everything's great, and there are no problems.
Yes, and this sword ironically makes everything amazing.
Yeah, they kind of gloss over how that happens.
We'll talk more, but there's a lot of things I'm just like, this doesn't quite make sense. Like how, like when everybody just knows that the sword was taken.
My favorite. No, because that's my thing. Because after the sword gets stolen, they sound like an alarm. And so I'm over here, I'm like, okay, so it's like 1 toot for war, 2 toots for dinner, 3 toots means Excalibur's been stolen. Because everybody instantly knows
Excalibur's been stolen.
How often is Excalibur getting stolen?
Well, if it's the source of the kingdom, like, I wouldn't be surprised if it happens like twice a year.
Also, that the Griffin, he gets it pretty easy.
Well, yeah, they don't have an air force.
Mm-hmm. So I mean that was clever of Ruber, not Ruben, Ruber. And you know, it does take him 2 tries.
Yes,
to the film's credit.
But we're jumping ahead a little bit.
Yes, okay, so everything is happy, but then her father is called to council.
Yeah, there's a council that's going on, and they go, and it's the whole now we're forever strong.
So good. So
it's one of my favorite ones.
And I'm sure that we're going to be talking favorite numbers at the end of this, but this was a good one for me. A really strong way to start off the movie. It's joyful. It's exciting.
It's definitely the one I remember, like the tune at least most.
Mm-hmm.
But ironically enough, I remember it, I think, so strongly because Ruber, like,
shuts it down.
Exactly.
But yes, so that's what happens. And this dude is just so clearly evil.
Yes.
Also, I love that all of his fingernails are fucked up.
Yeah.
What's that? They keep it consistent through the whole movie.
He's a bad man.
He's too coked out to nail care.
He's a bad man.
He's a bad man.
And the first thing in council is he's like, I want more land.
And Arthur's like, oh, Ruber. But Ruber's not playing around and draws a weapon and tries to go at Arthur.
Yeah.
And this is the moment where all the other knights realize, like, oh, maybe this Ruber fellow isn't on the same page as us.
It's like, huh.
Honor and charity and duty and all of that.
Because he's a redhead. He's the
Racism.
He's the only redhead in the room.
But he's banished.
Well, before he's banished, he kills Sir Lionel.
Oh, yeah, how could I forget?
And it does appear that Sir Lionel is like Arthur's most trusted knight. He's literally sitting at Arthur's right hand at the table.
Well, Arthur says later in the film that he was. He vocalizes that.
You say that about if you at their funeral, like he was the best. He was my right hand man. Always leaned on him for counsel.
Okay, good point. But you're saying it seems there's evidence to that fact.
Yes.
Because very sad. I believe the follow-up scene is the knights like returning with the body of Sir Lionel to the home of Kayley and her mother.
Which there's snow.
Yeah. How far away is Camelot?
But apparently, like, they try to relay that it's far, but then it took them like 2 days to get to the sword back to Camelot. But
don't overthink it. It works for the mood. It's supposed to be a very sad, downer point in the movie.
It is. But I think it does like a good job of like showing Kayley's like, again, like I'm going to keep saying it, free spirit, like open will, because she does her whole musical number.
Yeah, what is it? On my father's wings.
Yeah. Because I think almost all the singers are country singers.
Yeah, so checked in with my mom about this movie. I was talking to her today about some other stuff, and I just brought up that this is what we're discussing on the podcast, because I was sure she would remember the film. She didn't.
I wonder.
But as soon as she got eyes on the soundtrack, she's like, oh, I know this is a good movie. Specifically, who was it? As soon as my mom saw Andre Bocelli, she was like, oh, I know this is a great movie. And I was like, well, it is, Mom. Maybe we'll have to pop it in again one of these days.
Mama Snyder over here with good taste.
Yeah, but it's a lot of stuff. It's a lot of minivan classics.
Yeah.
You got in fact, the singing voice for Kayley is Andrea Corr of the Corrs. Do you know their biggest hit?
What is it?
Because you do know it.
I do.
You do know it.
What is it?
It's called Breathless. And it's like, go on, leave me breathless.
Yep.
You hear it now.
I hear it now.
Classic.
And apparently the singing voice for Garrett, Brian White, apparently he's like a pretty big country artist.
That's one that I'm not familiar with, but his voice and the production aesthetics of the music in this overall do sort of match that like inoffensive soft pop of the era.
Well, and he does quite well when he has the duet with Andrea Corr. Like, I feel like their song, like, again, well,
it's not a bad song. It's a bit of an eye roll in the context of the movie.
Yeah.
But I agree that the actual tune is not bad.
Yeah. But again, going back to the movie, like, she's showing like that she wants to be going off somewhere instead of doing chores around the farm, getting a dress done, which it's funny. The mom's making a wedding dress. Like, it's clearly a wedding dress.
Did not catch that, but that's, we'll bring it back at the end of the movie there.
It's literally the dress that she wears at the end of the movie.
Supposedly, we are led to believe that there are no men in their lives at all.
Well, there's one.
Who?
He's one of the farmhands.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm glad that you were paying attention.
Austin, I stand up for men on this show. They just don't get enough representation in these movies.
A joke, I'm sure. I think we're back over to Camelot because they're at the round table and a griffin.
I just want to say I love the conversation that they're having because it's literally like, and Camelot is just getting better.
Up.
It's literally all they're saying, like, guys, since we have Excalibur, things just keep getting better.
Yeah. We just don't get it. The movie, 86 minutes. I love it. Love it. They don't have time to explain it, but you have to trust that things are just good when you have Excalibur around.
You didn't buy the dip. If you didn't buy the dip, you don't understand.
But, almost.
Speaking of the dip.
Griffin breaks in. It looks super intimidating. It's awesome. And snatches the sword.
I love the Griffin look. Like, this Griffin, I enjoyed it.
I also enjoy the switch that they do later, because from initially, like, a really intimidating beast.
Yes.
And like well drawn, animated. It's with the purple and green. It's sort of evoking the Maleficent thing, which we both love so much. Mm-hmm. But then later in the film, you hear it speak. and it just shuts down that whole thing.
Now, let's not bash on who was it that did it?
It's funny. I am down with this choice, especially because that is now, like, when they get to that point, he's talking to Ruber, so they need to position Ruber as, like,
the big bad.
He's the top.
Yes. Bronson Pinchot. Sure,
but the Griffin, when you hear it talk, he's kind of like, oh, we'll see if I can do this. And he's like, Ruber. No, that's not even it.
Because it's a little shrill.
It's like halfway between what the two of us just did.
Yeah.
And like very froggy. And it's funny. It's funny is what I'm trying to get at. Yeah. I liked it. No. But in this moment, the knights are panicking, rightly so. The Griffin is off with the sword. He's home free, but a little bird,
Silverwings, protects the sword.
This is Aiden from later in the film, the falcon that meets up with Garrett, but belonged to Merlin in the first place.
Yeah.
So the falcon goes after the Griffin and
Well, I think it literally has like silver on its wings, is able to just like give it some cuts.
And it makes the Griffin drop the sword into the Forbidden Forest. No, not that Forbidden Forest, but the Forbidden Forest.
The OG Forbidden Forest.
I guess you could say. When was first Harry P published? Like I think it was actually before this. But as we stated, this movie was originally slated for 95. Here, you talk and I'm going to look that up.
Yeah. So, and I love the animation of when it does drop into the forest, because you have all of like the tree hands coming up and trying to grab for the Griffin, all the spikes on it. And the Griffin is definitely just like, oh, fuck. Like,
okay. First Harry Potter book was published June 26th, 1997. So before this film's release, but prior to its production.
Yeah.
The Forbidden Forest. Carry on.
Original name. This is when the legendary horn goes off and everyone's like, the sword has been stolen. And eventually Kayley is like, oh no, the sword, it's been stolen. I need to go look for it.
Yeah, she's gonna do something about it.
But she's gotta get the dress. Like, you gotta put the dress on it. Because her mother's like, no, let the knights handle it.
But the call to adventure is too strong, because before too long, Ruber pays a visit.
Yeah, he just shows up.
He says, I was in the neighborhood, thought I'd invade. Incredible.
There's a couple lines like that. It's just, and he shows up with like straight up Neanderthals, like, like they're in loincloths that like.
Well, it's about who would follow this guy. But I feel like this is left over from that more adult version of this story, where it kind of seems like Ruber had the hots for Sir Lionel's wife, and that's what he's here to kidnap her. But I guess that's sort of part of his plan, is to use her to get back into Camelot. Because
Arthur says during the funeral, if you ever wish to come to Camelot, the invitation is there.
Yes. So that's the justification, but the undercurrent of this scene is him being like, no, I'm getting Excalibur, and that means I get to have whatever woman I want.
Yeah. So I even think that he was like, you're still single, I'm right.
And she's like, you're mad. And he's like, thanks for noticing. I've been working on it for years.
Gary Oldman, he's clearly the best part of this movie.
Let's talk Gary Oldman for a second.
Okay.
Because I have a confession to make, Bryce.
Yes.
Not a Gary Oldman fan.
I know you're not a Gary Oldman fan, but the roles that I like him in, I love him as Sirius Black. I love him as Detective
Commissioner.
There we go, Commissioner Gordon. I do enjoy him. I'd love to see him more in, like, when he plays this villain role. I love it. Like, I'd love to see him in more villain roles.
He's not bad. Like I want to be. It's more of just a me thing. And as objective as you can be about these things, I'm probably wrong. I just tend to find him. I just, in a lot of his performance, it reads like he gives it too much gas to me, and sometimes the role like this calls for an over the top performance, and especially with like this is kind of like the sneak Oldman, where I didn't even know it was him while I was watching most of the movie, and I loved it.
Yeah.
But then there's some like he plays like a white Rasta dude in the movie True Romance, and that's just like the perfect example to me of like, who accepts this role? Like it's not just like a juicy like scenery chewing role. Like, this is too much, man. And I've run up against that with some regularity in his filmography, but he is a talent. And I'll admit that. And all this is really just coming around to say, like, even me, the Gary Oldman denier, could not fault this vocal performance, which was his first voice acting performance in a feature film.
Has he done more than this?
What? Of course. Kung Fu Panda, right?
Obviously.
Kung Fu Panda 2.
Who is he a Kung Fu?
I've never seen it. Love Kung Fu Panda 1, and we have talked about doing that on the show. I think we could justify it.
Yeah,
but
the Dragon Warrior.
Mm-hmm. And I think that Poe like kind of like channels like a spirit dragon in one of the movies later.
Sure.
Anyway, Kung Fu Panda, strong animated franchise, and Oldman has done selective vocal work since Quest for Camelot, but based on this, I kind of wish that he found time for more.
Oh, we're probably gonna be just talking him up so much in this film, but I can honestly say in this Disney Renaissance era, he's making a case for top 3 favorite villains in an animated film.
Ooh, who's he in conversation with?
Well, obviously Scar.
Scar's tops.
And then
Jeremy Irons.
And then
Ursula, dude.
I was just about to say Ursula is always really good, but Jafar is also really
Love
good.
Jafar.
But the thing is, like, I put him up there.
Yeah, I mean, those Disney movies are the standard, and I'd say this one element is there. Like, this is probably the only, or rather the best element from this movie that you could compare to those Disney Renaissance films.
Yes.
It's pretty good.
And as we're about to talk about, even though his song's not terribly memorable, like, I always remember the actual, because the stuff that's going on is pretty awesome.
I kind of disagree. I think that this song is very memorable, but it is not sing-alongable to
Yes.
at all.
I think that's more what I'm trying to get at, is it's not sing-alongable, but everything that's going on, the tune, the actions taking place, very, like, I'll always remember him building his mechanical army.
This was a deeply disturbing scene to me as a child.
I thought it was awesome. I always, for whatever reason, like it's burned into my memory, the bigger guy with the fork, like, and he's so proud of it. And he literally like rips the fork out, gives him a crossbow and pushes him into the pit.
So for those who haven't seen the film, what happens is that Ruber has this magic potion that he creates like a little portal thing in the middle of the ground where it's like a combining potion.
Yes.
So what he's doing is he's combining these Neanderthals, as you called them, with weapons.
Yes.
And he's turning them like into like mechanical monsters.
Yes.
So the first thing that he does is he puts a chicken and an axe into it, just proof of concept, and it makes Bladebeak.
Played by Jareel White.
Fun character.
Fun character.
He's fun. But then, yeah, so he'll put in like a sword, and then one of the dudes will go in and they'll come out and they'll have sword hands.
Or my favorite is the guy that he puts like morning stars in, and he just has like the morning star arms and he's able to like swing around.
The flails?
Yeah, the flails.
How's that dude wipe? From this point on.
I don't think he's wiping.
It
didn't look like he was wiping before either.
Oh no. Yeah, but regardless, just I think the concept of this was disturbing to me as a child, and this would like grow into more of a fascination. Like I think this planted the germ that made me like love the David Cronenberg's The Fly so much. Which is the exact same thing. Dude gets combined with a fly. But I was just like, when I was a little kid trying to have these thoughts, I'm like, okay, but what if you put like a person and another person in? What would happen there? Or like, what if you put a person and a plate of spaghetti into the pit? What kind of monster would that make?
What if you put a dragon with a dragon, Austin?
Well, this movie almost answers what would happen when you do that.
Is that what happened?
I don't think so. I think they're from birth.
Oh, okay.
Well, but then again, because at the end of the movie,
they separate when everybody else separates.
When like the dark magic is being dispelled, they separate. Did we just crack it? Comment below.
But during this time, Rupert is explaining his plan. He's like, okay, we're going to take her to Camelot. They're going to let us in to Camelot. And once we're inside, then we'll take over the city and I will be king.
That's his evil plan. He's totally unapologetic about it. And I promise we'll accelerate after this. But I do just want to say on this song, I love it. It's like an intense industrial 90s beat. He is all over the place on this song. Like I say, you can't sing along to it because he's just totally mad. And then near the end, all of his minions start chanting this like wicked mantra, dude. Yeah, here's it go. They go, "Bring on the darkness, bring on the gloom. We are the army of death and gloom." Although I mean, rhyming gloom with gloom is kind of lazy, but heavy, dude. Heavy.
He's the Dark Lord over here.
And anyway, Gary Oldman making his mark with his villain song in this movie.
And when he screams, "Everything will be mine," like, great.
Mm-hmm. Solid.
But during this, Kayley escapes.
She sure do.
And the Griffin arrives. And this is where we actually first hear the Griffin voice. And Gary Oldman's Rupert is just like, oh, you were able to steal the sword, weren't you? Excellent. And you were able to damage Arthur. And he's like, yep, I was able to do that.
Actually.
Well, he's like, and you brought me the sword, didn't you? He's like, well,
I was a little trouble. I'm getting closer.
We're getting closer. And I think that's when he rips off its eyebrow or something like that.
He's abusive. It's an abusive relationship. Griffin needs to get out of that one. Mm-hmm. Pack his bags.
Mm-hmm. But that's when he realizes Kayley's escaped.
Yes.
And so
but he doesn't send the Griffin after her.
No, why would he do that?
He sends two of his monstrosities.
Riding boars.
Yes. And I also love that, like, right as they're getting up to the Forbidden Forest, seemingly both boars die at the same time.
They're carrying metal men.
Yes, but simultaneously?
Checks out.
Anyway, they pursue her into the forest. They're making a big mess of it. But I do believe that she encounters Garrett before they catch up to her.
Well, I do think it's worth noting as they're going through the Forbidden Forest, you're already seeing that there's oddities in the forest.
Yes.
Like there's plants that have eyes. There's all sorts of different things. And then she jumps into the water and she meets Garrett by ruining his net.
Mm-hmm. And the minions, they catch up to her, but Garrett is able to best them using the forest. You know,
using the forest and Skuthakusven with the hawk.
Yes. They work together and he knocks one of them into like a talking stone head thing.
Yep.
And the other one into like a whirlpool.
Yep.
And that's that. And now we're being introduced to Garrett, who is the male lead, you could say, of the movie.
The rugged, handsome, blind hermit.
Yes, and she's trying to thank him from saving her life, and he just wants to go on with his life. He's voiced by Carrie Hughes, of Princess Bride fame, as well. Doing a good job, I would say.
Yeah,
it seems comfortable in a fantasy setting, but as they're kind of bantering, he talks about how he's a loner and he likes it that way, and before long he breaks into song, and kind of an odd tone to take for a song with that message.
Also, he's bashing every other song throughout the rest of the film. Like when the dragons sing, he's like, can we not sing?
No, because it's one of the dragons that says to the other that's like, was that the first time you've sang? Or was that it? Anyway, somebody digs in him.
Yeah.
But yeah, because the whole thing is him like, he's like, I'm all by myself. I don't need anybody. But then, sorry, I don't know this song as well, but it's like so triumphant. But then you're like, yeah, but that's sad.
It should have been more of like I don't want to say a sad song, but more of a somber tone.
Yeah.
Because like the actual lyrics are not bad because he's like comparing himself to a tree. He's like, trees stand alone, but they stand strong and stuff like that. And
yes, it's just a bit of an odd calculation when you actually consider what he's saying, especially because that is something that he is to overcome in this film.
But I also think it's more showing like what he's going through because as he's singing, it's showing how he's able to circumnavigate the forest.
Yes, because that's the other side of it is like he does seem to get along by himself quite well.
Yeah. And
by himself with a big asterisk because he's got Aiden.
Mm-hmm.
Don't forget about the falcon.
His seeing eye bird.
Lucky that.
Lucky that. But
what's up next? So the bad dudes get spit out by the Rockhead in the whirlpool, and Ruber and company catch up to them and get the scoop.
Yes, because Bladebeak was following Garrett and Kayley.
Yes, and this is the point where he does the taxi driver a quote. He's like, "You looking at me?
Yeah, at the-
looking at me?
at
And
the-
he's like doing the finger gun. That's just for the adult viewers.
There's a couple of those.
Yeah, and at the end of the movie, he does Dirty Harry, but he says, "Are you feeling clucky, punk?"
He's
It's a bit of a reach, but I didn't mind it. Maybe I just because I saw it as a kid, you know.
oh, yeah.
But are we in Dragon Country?
Yeah, we're in Dragon Country.
I actually don't recall why Garrett agrees to help her.
So he finds out that she's going for Excalibur. And he's like, "Oh, I will go do that with Aiden." She's like, "I'll come with you."
Mm-hmm.
And then he's like, "No, we're not." And I don't know if it was here or if she just followed, but at some point she mentions that she's the daughter of Lionel.
Yes. And later in the film, it is revealed that he and Lionel had a connection, that Lionel was the one who kind of helped him find his way after he lost his sight.
Yeah.
And also that he has dreams of becoming a knight as well.
Yes. Well, has had sort of thing.
It was certainly his dream before he lost his sight.
Yes. And he sort of like resolved that that's not going to happen. But
For now.
for now, yes. But they're in Dragon Country and they're walking, and eventually Kayley like steps on an egg. And even as a kid, like I was always like, "What? No! Why did she break the egg? That's a dragon egg."
Sad. But then you realize that there are many dragons in this land, and most of them are quite evil. They have a whole rule about not helping humans.
They do. But this is the point where we meet the comic relief of the film.
Cornwall and Devon.
Devon is so... Why Devon for a dragon name?
They're named after the southmost counties of England.
Are they really?
Yes.
Okay. I didn't know that.
I didn't know that until today as well. Because we are dirty Americans.
Are they right next to each other then?
Probably.
All right.
But, yep, so it's a two-headed dragon, which is, of course, today's notable first. Because that is a regular thing with dragons, that they are often portrayed with multiple heads.
Yes.
But this is the first that we have encountered one of those in all of our media coverage, and I think that that is worth celebrating.
Yes. And I just want to say, like, oh, dude.
Hit me with it. Let her rip.
Like,
Beyblade.
we're going to talk about the character at the end of the film, but this is the voice actors. This isn't the character themselves. I love what Eric Idle and Don Rickles do. Like,
They're fun. I think that the G rating sort of curbs what they could have done in this movie, but I do like it. Do you know these two men? I'll break it down real quick for you.
Yeah.
Eric Idle, Monty Python.
Okay.
Arguably one of the two funniest members of Monty Python, which also comes with being arguably one of the most difficult members of Monty Python. Apparently he and Cleese like really did not get along when they were doing all of those films and the show and all that.
Interesting.
But of course, comedy legend. And Don Rickles, also a comedy legend, probably best known in this world for being the voice of Mr. Potato Head.
That's okay.
You're trying to place it?
Yes. Now it's clicking.
He's also great in the movie Casino, which I just recently watched. One of my favorite Scorsese's. Very underrated. But yeah, they're fun. They have a fun back and forth. They have two distinct voices,
yes,
which I appreciate in kind of a buddy scenario. And pretty quick, we're into their musical number, if we can just jump to that.
Well, they're chased by the dragons.
There's a quick dragon chase, but they get away.
Yes.
And then they're kind of like they're expressing that they feel like they hold each other back.
Yes. And they just really hate each other. And it's It's an amazing song.
You like it?
I love it. It's not as memorable as the opening, as the song that they're singing as they go to the round table, but it's fun. It gives me I know it's a completely different message, but it gives me the genie. Like when you like,
it is 100% evoking the Robin Williams Never Had a Friend Like Me sequence, especially visually, because they do a lot of like pop culture stuff.
Yes.
Now the actual song itself, because I think it's called If I Didn't Have You, so it kept making me think of the Monsters Inc. song, even though that song has the total opposite message.
Yes.
It's still kind of the buddy back and forth thing. But yeah, it's fun. It's not one of the better songs in my opinion, even though it does have a lot of personality. And all day I've just had, I'd be dancing with the dinos, swinging with the rhinos stuck in my head.
It's something.
You have any other thoughts on that?
No. Well, also we find out they're 500 years old.
Yes. Ancient.
But they do get out of Dragon Country. And
Oh my goodness. I forgot to point out, because I think this is a detour worth having. As they're entering Dragon Country, Kayley is sort of thinking out loud, and she's like, what is a group of dragons called? Is it a pack or a flock? Is it a gaggle or a pride? Is it a herd? I think this is something we need to nail down as the Dragon Movie and Television Podcast.
So,
because she doesn't answer it.
Here's the thing. There's a few, none of those I feel like are fitting. And I have, there's been several different versions. Like in the inheritance cycle, I am kicking myself.
I have it if you don't have it.
Oh, you do?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Well, I know that in the Fourth Wing, it's a popular book that went TikTok famous. And it's essentially like Aragon and it's like a dragon rider military camp. And they call it a riot
That's good.
of dragons. And I think that's appropriate.
Now, Paolini coined the term thunder
Yes.
of dragons.
I was thinking storm, but that's, yes. A thunder of dragons, that seems quite appropriate.
Now, with some quick Googling, other common phrasing for a group of dragons is a flight of dragons, a weir of dragons, a school of dragons, or a wing of dragons. One last option, there is a Japanese term for a collection of dragons called a tatsu. So if you want to go with a little bit more of an official pinned down version, that could work. But what are we feeling? I like thunder, or I think a flight of dragons makes sense.
I think I'm either going to thunder or I'm going to the riot. Because a riot of dragons.
Do we just want to pay an homage to Paolini and roll with the thunder?
I'm down
for all of our hate on the Aragon episode.
Hey, we talked up the inheritance cycle.
Yes, we did.
Paolini has nothing to feel offended about.
TikTok thinks otherwise because all they saw was our Star Wars comparison.
We understand what the hero's journey is.
You're talking to the wrong people. But past this musical number, yes, which is fun. Also a notable first, I think, today in that this is like the first true blue musical.
Yes.
That we've covered on the show.
Yes. It's listed as a musical.
Yeah, there were like musical numbers, diegetic musical numbers in the Rankin and Bass Tolkien movies, but it's not really the same. It's not the same as like the characters taking a moment to like reveal themselves through song.
Yes.
The way this movie does.
Yes.
So sorry to backtrack on all of that, but no, I felt like that was really important to nail down.
No, I appreciate you doing that. One quick thing, it's something we can really glaze over, but the Ruber is cooking one of the dragons because Ruber fights the dragons. Uh-huh. And Cornwall and Devon smell the dragon because it shows like the scent and they're like, something smells good. And I'm just like, ooh.
Something a little off about these two. Well, when they're introduced, did you catch that line?
Which one?
Because Kayley's like, what's that? And then Devon is like, frankly, we're the reason cousins shouldn't marry. Cracked me up.
They had a couple of those zingers in there that are like...
They did.
Like, Gary Oldman as Rupert, clearly my favorite. But Eric Idle, I definitely preferred Eric Idle, I think, as Devon.
I think he's a little better equipped.
Well, because he's got like that gentleman, like, because he's playing himself as like, oh, I'm a proper gentleman. Wow.
He's still mean.
Oh, no, but all his insults are like, I don't want to say classy, but like they have like, they have the whole napkin, he places his napkin down before he.
Yes. Now, to bring up once again the Robin Williams genie. Mm-hmm. Idol, who is not a reliable source, but just to get this out there, he has tweeted that he and Rickles, quote, ad-libbed for days for this movie, and that none of it was actually used. So maybe locked away in some vault somewhere, there are just like hours and hours of them riffing on each other, but it seems like most of what made it into the film was actually just the script as written.
I don't necessarily believe that, because there's one line that is particularly said that, like, you don't see the line in general, like in movies. And again, I am quoting, I am not saying, but he essentially calls himself retarded. Like, mm-hmm. I'm like, I don't know if that's family friendly.
Welcome to 1998.
Again, that's where I'm thinking that Eric Idle and Don, that was one of their lines. Like, I don't see the writers writing that up.
See, one way or another, I do think that their flavor still made it into the final product.
For sure.
And there's no getting around that.
Yes.
I like their contribution. Let's continue with the plot, if we may.
So they're making their way downtown. Moving fast, and they're in the forest where the Ents attack them.
I had the same thought, and this is right as Ruber and the evil people catch up to them, so they sort of use the trees to delay them.
Yeah. Well, and again, it's using what we were talking about, because at one point there was rope tied around one of the tree creature's arms, and Kayley like pulls on that, and it just makes it so the arm goes and crashes on Ruber and his guys. Excuse me. So she's not fighting sword to sword with an ex-knight of the Round Table.
Anything on that, or maybe we continue?
Yeah, we continue.
Okay, so this is enough to create a trauma bond between Garrett and Kayla.
Because Garrett gets hurt.
Kayley, sorry. Yes. And then, because this is where they have the Through Your Eyes song, which was supposed to be like a Can You Feel the Love Tonight type thing.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say it's necessarily a bad song on its own, but again, in the context of the film, it's a little bit like, because he's blind. Through your eyes.
I was getting more the Magic Carpet Ride song from Aladdin.
Either one.
Okay, yeah, okay. But yeah, the song's all right. The two singers do a well enough job.
Yeah. But again, it's just kind of an eye roll for me.
Yeah.
We eventually get to
the ogres. And they find Uncle Oric.
What?
Devon and Cornwall. There's a dragon skeleton that falls on Kayley and Garrett.
They know him?
And they're like, Uncle Oric.
Oh no!
dragons. And they're holding the skull. And they're like, it's Uncle Auric.
So we're taking a break from what I would say is a pretty watchable movie. Like the animation, it's not the best.
Yeah.
But it's pretty clean. It's kind of weirdly shaded.
Yeah.
And it feels a little bit cheap compared to like the best stuff coming out of the time. So like it's not up to that Disney Renaissance, but just imagine like a cheaper version of like Atlantis.
Yes.
Well, I forget the subtitle of the Disney Atlantis movie. The Lost City.
The Lost Empire or something.
Yeah, something like that. It's like a cheaper version of that with slightly less defined like outlining. Not bad. Now we take a break and introduce a Shrek.
Yep.
It is a literal ogre, and it is rendered through CGI.
Yes.
And it does not look good.
No, it doesn't look great. I'll say this.
Somebody!
I appreciate I don't even want to say effort. I appreciate what they were trying to do. They were trying to make something completely different. And I would have almost preferred what they did with Hercules, with the Cyclops. But
that would have been better.
But luckily it's not there for that long.
It's just this one thing, and most other uses of like 3D rendering are static, and I think actually more properly deployed. This is just the one part of the film where I'm like, no, that looks bad.
Yeah.
So the ogre has Excalibur and
using it as a toothpick.
Yeah. He has no idea.
He's got the cleanest teeth he's ever had.
Yeah, but that's not what ogres want.
No, they don't. But through the power of friendship and teamwork, they get the sword, and Ruber and the Griffin get trapped underneath the ogre's butt, and some classic little kid humor.
What?
And the ogre farts and
got him. Yeah. Anyway, I don't have some notes for a while, so they get the sword.
They get the sword.
They're on their way,
and right when they get to the edge of the Forbidden Forest, Garrett's like, "Here's the sword. I can't go."
And he's like, "My work. I stand alone. My work is done."
It must have been earlier when we got this backstory between him being because I think he just goes. He's saying like he just can't go back. Like it's just too much for him. And so, and throughout the movie, you can tell that Kayley's falling for Garrett. But I never really got the sense that Garrett was like, yes, they had the whole duet, but I never got the sense Garrett was really falling for her.
Yeah, and it's also like, yeah, she's like a young, attractive girl, but he's blind.
Yeah.
He's blind. But it's, it's a animated family film, and they're going to fall in love. It is what it is.
It is what it is. Is it? It's not Disney, is it? Sorry,
did I say Disney? Disney-esque,
I was like, we can't be speaking this blasphemy.
But after they separate, Ruber and the baddies catch up to her, and they get the sword.
Well, it's because she's moping and like only looking at the sword and looking at her feet. And then Ruper shows up. He's like, oh, that's mine. And I always loved this as a kid. I don't know why I was obsessed with it.
He brings up the combination potion one more time.
Pours it on his wrist, and he combines his hand with Excalibur.
Got him. Now nobody's swiping it from him.
No.
Arthur should have done that years ago.
Exactly. But Devon and Cornwall go back to Garrett, telling him what happened, and they, without even noticing, because they're working together on something.
Yeah, they are agreed that they want to save Kayley, and so they're flying.
They're flying. Great Scott! They're flying!
Which this is established a lot earlier in the movie, that they can't fly and they can't breathe fire.
Yes.
They never breathe fire.
Whoops, I misspoke here, because Devon and Cornwall do in fact breathe fire one time at the end of the film when they're fighting the Griffin. They learn to work together, and they unlock some new abilities. Sorry about that.
Well, that's where the whole inappropriate word was brought up.
Indeed. But in this moment, they learn how to fly. Also, found it quite amusing because they have just like the tiniest little wings, but they get 10 times bigger when they start flying. Like before they start flying, freaking Devon's ears look bigger than the wings on their back. And then they start flying and they get big.
Their ears shrink and the wings get bigger.
They become frequent flyers.
Yes.
So that they can rush to Camelot. Ruber uses... oh, shoot. I'm forgetting. What is Kayla's mom's name?
Oh, shoot. I think it's Lady Joanna.
Okay, you wrote it on the sheet as just mother.
I was limited on space.
Anyway, but he's Trojan horsing, like he's hiding in the carriage, but she's getting through the gates of Camelot. Once they get inside, they start raising hell because they've got Excalibur. But Cornwall and Devon fly Garrett over the wall with also Bladebeak is like kind of a good guy after all of it.
Yeah. Well, I think what it is he's in the carriage and his chicken wife is in the carriage. 'Cause that's a whole thing.
It is. It's brought up multiple times.
But right when all the carriages are in, Kayley warns everybody that's a trap.
Yes. So a battle ensues.
Mm-hmm.
It's fine. It's they have to have a big battle at the end of the movie. It's a fantasy movie.
And Ruber's just kicking Arthur's ass. Like
But eventually so yeah, I mean like they do the pair ups like Bladebeak's got who he's fighting. Do you feel clucky punk? And Cornwall and Devon are fighting the Griffin.
Yeah.
And eventually it comes to where Garrett and Kayley are up against Ruber.
Yes.
Oh man, keeping all these names straight. And they pull a sneaky little trick on him where they're standing in front of the stone that the sword was pulled from.
Yes.
And then right when he's about to stab them, they duck out of the way and he stabs into the stone.
Well,
and they win.
Well, that was a callback because Garrett was trying to train Kayley a little earlier on in the film, and it's like, I use Aiden. Aiden will warn me, and so at the last minute, I duck and move because they were training with the plant that like shoots the whip out, and it's a play on that.
All right, so it was established. They use the technique.
Yes, they use what they've been working for and training for, and for some reason, just stabbing Excalibur into the
it's a reset. All evil magic dispelled in the region. Arthur should be doing it every 24 hours, if you ask me.
Apparently, honestly, I think this is just a way so they don't have to watch the villains starve to death and like die of dehydration.
Is that supposed to happen?
Well, that's the logical thing that would happen.
Oh, his hand is just stuck in the...
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a children's film, man.
Yeah, like, that's what... Like, if this was more an adult, like, that's what it would be. They'd just be sitting there, or they'd chop his arm off. And...
But that's not this movie.
That's not this movie.
The end of our beloved Ruber. And indeed... then everybody kind of lives happily ever after. Garrett and Kayley get married. They both get knighted.
They technically get married, but they never actually say they got married.
They don't say I do, but she's in the white dress. He's all done up as well. The carriage says just knighted on the back.
It's just a horse.
The horse says just knighted on the back. And that's the movie.
That is the movie.
And it ends with... I don't even remember where it fits in, but Celine Dion, as the voice of Mother, has a song in the middle there, which comes back in the later parts of the credits, but with the duet. That's the song that was Oscar nominated. I bring this up because, yes, we want to do final thoughts on the movie, but I also just want to know what your favorite track was. Because to me... I think that song is probably the most accomplished. I understand why it got nominated.
But accomplished and favorite are two very different
Yes.
things.
While you're, I'll give you a second to think. Do you know what beat it at the Oscars?
What beat it?
Another animated film. A song from an animated film. 1998. You want to guess? It's a banger. Shared favorite.
Which one is it?
Prince of Egypt.
Oh, of course.
Like
you can't.
you can't top it.
No.
The song that it lost to When You Believe from Prince of Egypt.
Of course. That one's like I still sing that one.
10 out of 10. Not even my favorite song from that soundtrack.
Oh,
it's still a 10.
Look at your life. Look at your life through heaven's eyes.
Wonderful.
Okay, I know that you were, I don't want to say ripping on it, but saying that it wasn't, but I love the dragon duet. Like I genuinely love it. It's
If I Didn't Have You.
If I Didn't Have You is my favorite, but the one, I'm terrible with the names of it, but the opening one where they're in Camelot, like that's a close second.
That's probably getting my pick. The song is called United We Stand.
United We Stand. Okay.
Which has kind of weird Americana vibes to the title, but it just gets me hyped. It's exciting. I'm such a sucker for male choral vocals.
Yeah. But I also cannot discount Gary Oldman's song. Like it's just,
but that's the one that, and I should say too, because, there's a difference between like, if I was taking every song in combination with the scene, that's my number one pick.
yes.
But that's what's important to me, because I think that the song should be serving the film. Like I am not looking for a soundtrack that I'm going to buy independent from the movie and throw on. I think it should be serving the movie first.
Yes.
And that song is amazing and weird and certainly serves the story.
Yes.
So tops there, but again, it loses some points in this conversation because I'm never putting that song on separate from the media.
No, and I mean, and I know it's different for you, but for me, where I already have a lot, like I love Gary Oldman as Sirius Black. I love Gary Oldman as Commissioner Gordon. Like,
I think he's kind of bad in the Dark Knight Rises.
do you really think he's bad?
I think he's
great.
He's going too big. He's great in Dark Knight and Batman Begins.
Okay, well, as much as I love Bane is one of my favorite Batman villains. The Dark Knight Rises is the weakest of the three.
Oh, unequivocally.
Yeah, like the Dark Knight's clearly the best. Like,
I think Batman Begins and Dark Knight are kind of the same level, even though they are different films.
We got a Dragon grade to do, but I just will say this. Heath Ledger's Joker nobody compares to it in Batman Begins. Like literally, like, so for me,
best performance in the trilogy.
By far. So for me, that's why it's clearly above Batman Begins, just because there's just like, as cool Scarecrow is, as cool as Liam Neeson is as Ra's al Ghul, Heath Ledger is just literally a demon that we'll never see again.
Agreed.
But
you like Gary Oldman, though.
I like Gary Oldman, but that's my character flaw, I guess, over here.
Any other thoughts on... You good?
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on the movie overall before we get into grading Cornwall and Devon?
There's definitely a lot of... I was thinking, like, oh, this just isn't what it was when I was a kid. But at the same time, it's still quite enjoyable. I'm not going to sit here and say this is a great movie, but it's a very enjoyable movie. And it's fun. Like, it's... As an adult, I genuinely did have fun watching it.
An easy 86.
Yeah.
I had a good time with it too. I have waited to the end here to drop the bomb that just in general, I don't really like musicals. Like even the best stuff, it just doesn't really tend to work for me. Yeah. I find it to be, anytime a musical number happens, it feels kind of like an interruption to the flow.
Yeah.
Especially like I think a live setting is a much better place for that. I am a lot more eager to go see a live musical than to see a musical film. That said, didn't mind this. Had a
I-
good time with it. Enjoyed most of the songs. The animation isn't bad.
I will share, like, growing up, I don't know if you're familiar, but I'm sure you know, but they always had those like sing-along movies that you just turn in, and it's just, I hated those. Like, even as like a little kid, I'm like, this is the dumbest thing in the world.
Well,
And-
neither of us were true theater kids. Like, I made a run at it and realized it wasn't really my thing.
No, I got my head smashed in enough that I realized that I didn't need to go to theater.
Football, huh?
Football and wrestling. But even to this day, Prince of Egypt is a top 5 movie of all time for me. Like,
Really? I did not
Yes.
realize it was that high for you.
it's number 5, but still top 5 movies of all
Bryce,
time.
where are the dragons in that one?
They're snakes. Well,
God is a dragon.
that's a whole nother conversation. Quetzalcoatl, that Lord of the Sky and Earth, that means dragons. We're getting off topic here. But Prince of Egypt, top 5. It's number 5 of my all-time favorite movie.
Overt musical.
And it is an overt musical, but I will agree, most of the time I don't enjoy but the songs are just so good in that one. And
They
they
really
put
are.
so much work into it, and I feel like they work. Like, it's
And that's kind of my distinction there, where I do feel like a lot of the times in film, when they go into the musical number, the movie stops.
Yes.
But in the best of them, it doesn't. And you get that here. Like, there is like the character depth in a lot of cases comes from those introductory musical numbers.
yes.
And you know, as fun and weird and wacky as some of them are, that like there's actually something there that you can take into the rest of the movie. And I think that is the key to creating a great family musical.
Yes.
Sorry, maybe you were going in another direction. I cut you.
No. I was just gonna say, like, I completely agree with what you're saying here, but I'm sorry, I just have to get it out because it's on the mind. But look at your life through heaven's eyes. I'm sure there's a shorter. That's the only song in A Prince of Egypt where they're actually, the characters in the movie are singing the song. Everywhere else, it's more like background singing.
Is that true?
I'm pretty sure, because even like the song that they open up, like, you see them all building the pyramids and everything, and nobody's actually singing, but it's all what the Hebrews are singing. Like,
Well, there's the other one that I don't actually know the
Oh,
lyrics
no,
to,
it's-
but it's the plague song that they're like.
no, so they're not singing that one, but I was just thinking the priest song. The priest song and
By the power of Ra.
Moot.
So good.
Faru, Ptah.
Ah, dang. You're making me want to watch Prince of Egypt again.
We can do a stretch pick.
Okay, you're really going to have to dial in that. We're going to have to spend the first 15 minutes of that podcast explaining why we're doing that podcast.
I guarantee you that one of those Egyptian gods have dragon ties.
Okay. That's your homework assignment.
I will do that, and I will write a 5-page essay on why we should watch it. But speaking of 5-page essay, Austin, let's talk about grading Cornwall and Devon. And since they're a conjoined dragon, they're going to get 1 score.
Yes, absolutely. So you're going to be leading us off on this grade.
Yes.
Tell me about the design. How are you feeling about it, Bryce?
So I want to preface, I'm not a big fan of their design. I actually really enjoyed the design of the dragons in general. And
chunky.
they're chunky. And honestly, like, if I was giving those dragons, I gave them a score, but then we discussed before the podcast that we're just going to do it. I gave those dragons a 7 in design. I give Devon and Cornwall a 3.
A 3?
Yes. Like, I know they're supposed to be quirky and weird. It's just, I still don't like the design of them. Like,
I'm clearly a little bit more okay with the weirdness. And if you're going with the concept of a multi-headed dragon, that's setting yourself up for a bit of a challenge. That represents some ambition.
Yeah.
It gets even harder when you're talking about 2 dragons that for some reason have like radically different like head and neck shapes. And so maybe I'm just comparing like the reality of it to the conception of it. But I think that this actually came together really, really well. And that the design of it is still like comfortable, but it's wacky. So it's subverting the horror of their reality. And that is another aspect that if this movie got the PG-13 plus like Rickles and Idol were allowed to riff like that, I'm sure that they would have got into some of the humor relating to having like a shared body a little bit more.
I'm sure.
So I wish we could have had that. But as far as the design goes, I don't mind it. It's not like a grand slam in my book, but I actually think it's good. In fact, I actually think it's very good. I'm giving it a 7.
Dang. Now, I will say, I give a lot of the credit that you were giving in the X Factor, but that's just for me. I personally am just not a fan of the particular design.
I like it. I like the wackiness. I think that's the word.
No, that's fair.
Now, special effects, the animation, the rendering of this creature.
So I do keep going back and forth because, I mean, it's late 90s. Like, it's not like it's during the Disney Renaissance. So, I mean, like, it's not anything special, but it's better than a lot of the stuff that we've been seeing of late, special effects wise. And it's fun. Like, they look pretty good, especially compared to the Ogre. So I gave it a 6.
6 out of 10.
I think it's good.
Respectable. I actually think the animation in this movie is fine, but that is sort of relative to the period where, especially with that Disney Renaissance that we keep referencing to, like the heat was on. Like there was a lot of pressure to put out a quality product here. And I'm sure that a lot of those animators were abused to get us there. But the final result, like, it's not a hard movie to look at.
No.
And the animation is fairly fluid. In the case of Cornwall and Devon, I think that a lot of the fun of those characters actually comes in how they're realized and animated. I'm also thinking about their musical number where they're in a bunch of different costumes and contexts and all of that.
Yeah.
Then again, I want to give that. So that's like partially to the design, partially getting a little credit there for the character, but I'm also going with a 6 on the special effects score.
Respectable.
Now, character, what are you thinking?
You know, they're the second best characters in the movie. And for me, when it's a second best character, you clearly can't get a top score because you're not the highlight character-wise in the film.
Disagree with that, but this is your methodology.
This is my methodology. But I do think that they're genuinely, like, you get a lot of personality. You get a lot of character development. I think it's near perfect. It's a 9 for me. I'm not going to give it that 10, but I think it's a 9.
9 out of 10. Wow. That's quite the statement.
It's almost as good as Caraxes.
You said it. Caraxes just gets to hang out with that score that we gave him before we'd figured out our grading.
He is our dragon that has the sunglasses on.
Okay, now I'm not quite so hot on the character.
Okay.
I like it.
Yes.
And I had fun with them in this movie. They have a lot of personality. And again, their musical number is fun, but as we already outlined, I'm not as into it as you. I'm giving them a 7.
A 7?
Yes.
Dang.
We're only 2 points apart, but
It's a talking dragon. You always talk about how much you love talking dragons.
and I mean, they are just like oozing with personality. They really are. Dang.
And they have the character development. They hate each other, and then they realize they have to work together to get past their differences.
Okay, you know what it really is, Bryce? Because like they're funny, they're not that funny.
They're not.
It's what I'm kind of coming up against. Like, I like 1 in 5 of their jokes. I was like,
why
no,
it's
that was
9, not a 10.
okay. Let's move on. The film overall, what are you giving it out of 10?
This one, honestly, is the one I'm going back and forth.
Probably
Like,
not a 9.
No, it's not a 9. Like, I want to give it a 6. I don't, like, I know that's nostalgia. It's such nostalgia, and I just have to check myself. So to feel more appropriate, I'm giving it the 5 because I genuinely enjoy this movie. I understand it's not a good movie, but it's fun. Like, as I've already established, Gary Oldman as Ruber, top 3 potential villains in this Disney Renaissance era. And
there's a lot of good in this movie.
There's a lot of good.
And I hope that people can feel our passion for that is not entirely fueled by nostalgia. It is a little bit, but not entirely.
But I feel comfortable giving it a 5.
I'm doing the same. So I'm totally with you on it.
Perfect.
But like for my own experience and just having really enjoyed this film as a child, it's probably more like a 6 or a 7. But if I'm being honest, like a 5 is a more appropriate score.
Yeah.
Now, the last category is X Factor.
So this is where, like, yes, they have the double head. That's very unique to the dragon. And, like, even though, yes, we're eventually going to cover Mushu and Mulan, who is more entertaining than these guys, I have to still give credit in the X Factor. Even though I know that's character, it's still an X Factor that they're funny. And again, I give it a 5. Like, it's
feeling a little low to me.
I know it's low, but it's just, like I said, they're funny, but they're not that funny. They've got the conjoined heads, but we're going to eventually get into Hydras, and Hydras are all about having multiple heads.
Now, I think the distinction here is that they're so distinctly 2 different heads.
True.
Like the design and the voice and the personality of the 2 of them is so very distinct. And I think that's something that we're not going to run into very often.
That's fair.
So to me, it's an 8.
An 8.
An 8 for X Factor. I think this is a very different creature than we're going to run into with most animation. It's not like a runaway, like, what is this? 10 out of 10. But it's different. I think that they have not just one flavor, but 2 flavors, all their own. They're a Trix Rabbit dragon. Am I talking you up at all? I'm giving them the 8.
I'll give them the 6.
It's going to 6
because you're right. They're just so uniquely, like, they have their unique personality. We get the more, like, Cornwall has that more blue collar energy, while Devon definitely has that.
The prim and proper with the monocle.
Yes. And I also do love how Cornwall has that little tuft of hair at the very top of his head.
Yeah. This brings the final score for Devon and Cornwall in the 1998 film Quest for Camelot to a 6.2 out of 10.
Respectable.
Yes, it's kind of being brought down by that 3 on design you gave them, but I'll let it go.
Hey, it's good.
I enjoyed these guys. Good dragons, good movie. Great time watching this. Even better time talking about it with you.
Oh, I couldn't have said it better myself.
What else do we have to do to wrap up?
Austin, what question do you have for the audience?
What is the best number of heads on a dragon? Is it 1, 2, 3, or more?
You heard it here first, folk.
Weigh in.
Weigh in. Let us know in the comments below. Like you said, I've really enjoyed talking this movie. It has a special place in my heart.
It's one we had to get done early.
It really is.
I'm also proud of us because we're probably going to round this one out at just under an hour 40. I think that is pretty, like, we're trying to keep the run times a little lower just for our own sanity. But with our history with this movie, I think that we've done well today.
We have. But real quick before we close out, we are going to be starting another trilogy next week.
Let them know.
Even though it's a trilogy, it is the never-ending story that ends after the 3rd movie.
We're talking Falcor.
Falcor!
Dog dragon. Let's go. We already did the cat dragon. Now it's time But the dog dragon.
Who let the dogs out?
Oh.
Well, on that note, Richie, take it away. Like, share, comment below.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
Good night.
That's all for this week's Dragon Lore. Takes cold and hot, spread shore to shore. Enjoyed yourself? Please join the squad. Follow on social media at BigLizPod. And one quick reminder before you go, to rate, review, and share the show. Thank you for listening. It means a lot. See you next week, same time, same spot.